So, my name is Michelle Katz, and I had the pleasure of attending a retreat at Nimea in February 2018, which was an experience that is inexplicable, but I've done my best to try to understand and integrate and process the magnitude of this kind of experience. Meeting Jill and going down to Peru was possibly the most transformative experience I could ever imagine. And I think, Jill, you are the one and only person who could do the kind of work you're doing in the way you're doing it. And there's something so special about the center that I think it's worth really delving into. So I'd love to do this interview with you and find out so much more about you and your story.
Thank you. Yeah, my pleasure.
So if you could tell me and take me back to your very first experience in the jungle, why you chose to open the center and what was the actual trigger behind that experience?
Yeah. Um, so I first found ayahuasca, or rather, she found me back in February of 2007, so a little over 11 years ago. And I had been at a point in my life where I was just I had been searching for a long time. I was on a spiritual path and I was dealing with a lot of depression. And I was exploring a lot of different modalities of healing and consciousness expansion. I was reading a ton of books, but I just wasn't really finding what it was I was really looking for. And I was at a sweat lodge in Sedona, and I met a gentleman there that did these trips to Peru. And he told us all about ayahuasca and how amazing it is, and it can just heal so many different things. And so me and a couple of my friends were there, and we're like, this is what we need to do next on our spiritual path. We were hooked. We got our plane tickets, and we were down in the Peruvian Amazon just a few months later. So we took a boat downriver about 9 hours, and we ended up camping in 3 different places. And we were with a small group, and you can read as much as you can on ayahuasca, but there's only so much you can actually imagine in terms of how the experience is really going to be. There's only so much you can do to actually prepare. And the experience is going to be what it's going to be for you. And so I had 3 ceremonies in the Amazon, and they completely changed my entire life. And they were extremely difficult. And every day I was like, oh, I don't know if I can do the next ceremony. I don't know if I can do the next one, just because of how intense the visions were and the purging process. But as I went through my journey with the medicine, it just became the most amazing experience of my entire life. And I really began to see how it was a really true medicine and how it was actually healing me. And I could see all these unhealthy thought patterns I was carrying, these beliefs that I had about myself that weren't really true, and beliefs I had about the reality around us. And it just really gave me, a really profound experience to really deeply reflect on these things and to let a lot of these things go that weren't serving me. I spent a lot of time purging in the jungle, and it was really an intense experience. There were no bathrooms, there was not a maloca, there was not really a container for us to do this medicine. We were actually just out, with the nature, with the trees, with the bushes, and it was a very humbling experience to have done ayahuasca in that way. And there was a shaman there and his wife, and they were from the Shipibo tradition, and really beautiful couple, very beautiful medicine songs. But I found myself alone in the jungle for most of my experience because I was purging so much, and I, needed to be kind of out there to be able to release in that way. And it was just me and the medicine. So I ended up having a death experience in my very last ceremony. And I was with a friend out in the jungle, and she saw all these white lights starting to go around my head as I voiced out to her that I feel like I was going to die. And the next thing I knew, I was just on the ground in the fetal position. And the next thing I knew, I felt like I was in the womb. I was in the womb of Mother Earth. I was in the womb of the jungle. And still to this day, I've never felt so loved and so protected and so nurtured in that space. I could have just stayed there forever. Mm. But of course, I felt the medicine, say to me, okay, it's time to come out of this. It's this is your rebirth. Now it's time to move forward on your path. And so I kind of started to come out of that experience a little bit. And a little bit later in the night, I ended up having what I can just call a Kundalini awakening, just for lack of a better term perhaps, but just really feeling that energy come up from the base of my spine, out through the top of my head. And it was a very cosmically blissful experience. I mean, beyond anything I've ever felt before. And it ended up being the most beautiful night of my entire life. But that third night, like being able to go through that death and rebirth, I really had to do the work in the first couple ceremonies, and it was excruciating at times. There was a lot to release and a lot to reflect on, and a lot to really, to be like, okay, this is, all these things weren't serving me in my life, and now these are the ways in which I need to change. And in my second ceremony, when I really started to see how this was a true medicine, I started to kind of have this vision of helping to bridge this medicine for others, because I was like, if this can do this for me in such a short amount of time, wow, what it can do for so many other people that are struggling and suffering and all these things that, are keeping people in these very limiting paradigms back at home. So I already started to kind of have this little spark of inspiration come through in that second ceremony. And as our trip was coming to an end, and as we went back to the area of Yurinacocha, we met a man there, and he was an American, and he had land, and he was interested in selling the land at the time. And my friend said, oh, wouldn't it be, a wonderful idea to maybe buy land down here and open an ayahuasca center? And at first I was like, oh, that's a little much for me. I was still kind of really deeply processing my own ceremonies and how powerful they actually were. And I had a life back in the States, and I was moving forward with those plans. But after going home and kind of integrating some more and really feeling into this idea of, wow, we could really help a lot of people if we can help make this available and actually create a very safe container where people can experience this. And so that's what started to happen. And I was down there 6 months later doing more ceremony and really feeling into if this is, what I wanted to do with my life. And it became very clear that, yes, this was going to be my purpose, and I was going to dedicate my life to this. So in a nutshell, that's a little bit of how I got started on this journey.
So one thing that I'd like to know, and just in terms of for the interview, like we can go as deep as you want to go, but one of the things that I'm very curious about is, can you give us kind of an example of the transformation that happened to you? What was the before and after? Like what did before look like, and why was after so powerful?
Yeah. So again, I had a pretty normal, average, mainstream childhood. You grow up with your parents, you don't really have much to compare to, but, there was a little bit of dysfunction there, and I think a lot of people have that in their families. And so there were some imprints and some, just some limiting beliefs I was carrying, but a lot of that really sent me into some very deep states of depression in my life, and I really didn't know how to get out of that. And then I was turning to substances, whether it just be cigarettes or alcohol or some other things that just really weren't putting me forth on a more positive path on my life. But I had always had a really deep, innate longing to know spirit, God, source, whatever you want to call it, and really to know myself more. And really, I always had this really innate longing to know, like, just the nature of existence and the cosmos, and why the earth was in the predicament it was. Like, why was humanity, just why was there so much war? Why was there so much disease? Just so many questions. So, in my early 20s, I just started going down the rabbit holes and started doing a lot of research. And again, having an intellectual understanding of things was very beneficial, but there was something deeper that I needed to know more on my own from a direct personal experience. I had met my partner, Casey, and we had land off-grid in Arizona. So we had started building earth ships and rammed earth structures. So we were already kind of in a direction where, we were into alternative living kind of paradigms, and had plans to start a community out on our land where, people could kind of be out of the matrix. And but then we found ayahuasca, and our vision went to Peru instead. So, and after we started working with the medicine, it was amazing how quickly the depression just disappeared out of my life. It was like that rebirth actually did shift things on a very deep level for me. And I could also tell I had a lot of like reoccurring, like just negative thought forms going through my head. Of course, that was linked to the depression, but just gone. And it was really amazing to see that. Fortunately, I didn't have any severe, physical ailments at the time, but I did feel how much it cleaned out my body, and then how much I needed to keep with the diet and to keep really healthy. And so it was a really big shift, but obviously there was a period of integration, and so things, developed very slowly in the beginning in terms of opening a center, because we knew we actually, had a lot of work to do with the medicine, and to actually get to know this path and really get to know the Shipibo culture and how they work. And so it was a very grassroots effort at first when we opened our first center, which was called Tierra Vida. And now we're, 11 years into it, and it's kept becoming more amazing as we've gone, and just seeing all the transformations and healings people have gone through.
One of the really interesting things about your story that I would love to hit on is, as you know, you were ahead of the curve in terms of the Western culture starting to hear about ayahuasca and starting to do ayahuasca. What did that period of time offer you? What have you seen with your own center and your own work happen over this period of time? Because you did come into this fairly early on.
Yeah, that's a good question. And, like you said, even back then, around 2007, there wasn't a whole lot of information out there about this medicine. There's a few books out there from Ralph Metzner, Jeremy Narby, and Dennis McKenna, and Terrence McKenna had talked in depth about it a lot. But and so as time has gone on, we've seen people from all walks of life come, all ages, all ethnicities. It's been really beautiful to see how this has been the common thread. Like, people are really just at the end of their rope sometimes, and they really want some deep healing in their life. So, bringing this together, but over time, obviously as this has gotten bigger, just more of the scientific community is getting in on this, and psychologists and psychiatrists, and they're exploring this more as well, and to actually be able to bring a deeper understanding, bringing in the science and actually seeing how this is healing. Like, we have psychologists coming to our center, we have doctors coming to our center that are working on themselves, but they're often finding that their approach and their practice isn't enough anymore. And so, bringing in these new tools that they're gaining out of their ayahuasca experience is actually helping them to create a more holistic approach to help bring healing.
We are in this time, this unique time. I'd love to know from your perspective, based on the work you've done, why are so many people turning to ayahuasca with all its risks or with all its fear and fraught with so much uncertainty and, the things that people fear about the unknown? Why are people turning so much to this now?
Yeah, there are so many people turning to ayahuasca right now because they're actually feeling at the end of their rope. And they've gone through several different types of approaches with their healing that really haven't been getting to the root of their issues. So, for example, there's approximately 1 in 6 Americans right now taking some form of psychiatric medication, mostly antidepressants. And 60% of Americans are taking some type of pharmaceutical medication. So, coming back, so ayahuasca is actually going to the root of the issues and able to unlock these ailments and imbalances and really be able to purge this out of the system. So, yes, ayahuasca ceremonies are very intense experiences, and it is not for fun. But people are feeling like this is their last chance to really find true healing within themselves, to really reconnect with their own heart, and to really connect with spirit, because people are feeling such a disconnect. Obviously, we all have our childhoods, and a lot of them have some form of trauma. We've been conditioned by our societies, by our parents, by our religions and political structures and so forth. And it's created this veil of separation, from each other and from spirit. And so people are just feeling, very closed off. And, with the trauma that gets lodged in their system, this is eventually manifests as disease or ailments in the body. So a lot of these medications that people are taking, it's really just covering up the symptom, and it's not really truly healing the body. And so even with all the difficulties that may come along with doing an ayahuasca, retreat or a series of ceremonies, like now that so many people are doing it and sharing their stories, like it is rippling out, and the message is reaching a lot of people, and people are truly healing. And it's been amazing to see, the extent of how much it will heal in such a short amount of time. And that's been a really beneficial part of my path as well, to be able to witness this with so many people.
And what would you say to somebody who is like, my problem is especially difficult and especially scary and will be especially frightening to confront, and maybe it's not worth it. Maybe I'm better off just kind of sticking with the path I'm on, even though I'm hurting and I'm suffering. What would you say to the person who just really felt like they couldn't go that extra length, but really needed to?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. And I think a lot of people are kind of in that space right now where, they are scared to do something as, intense as ayahuasca. And first you have to feel it in your heart. Like you really have to feel the call, because this medicine isn't for everyone. And there are other healing modalities out there that can help people, but this is in a way a little bit of a fast track program. But you got to be willing to do the work afterwards as well. And so, for those people that are, considering doing ayahuasca, I would suggest that they really drop into their heart space and to really feel it out, because it's not for everyone. And I really feel like you need to have, the courage and the determination coming into this, and being able to really trust and surrender in the process, because that's the key, because if you go into the process and you just resist and you have a bunch of fear, it's going to be harder for the ayahuasca to really get into the root of the issues. But when one can actually really surrender into the process and trust ayahuasca, and they know they're in a safe, set and setting, that's going to be the key for really successful healing in their experience. So.
Tell me a little bit about the culture of the shamans and the healers that you work with. Like, what is special about this specific kind of shamanic tradition that you work with?
Mm-hmm. I was really fortunate to start working with the Shipibo tradition, even my first trip to Peru. And so I have continued working with the Shipibo indigenous healers of the area ever since. And the Shipibo culture is such a beautiful culture. They really value, the arts and dance and song, and just they are so in touch with nature and so in touch with the plants, and really using the jungle as their pharmacy. And so in terms of how one becomes a healer in the Shipibo tradition is they will do various plant dietas. And so they will be out in isolation, and they will be, dieting a particular plant for several weeks or several months at a time, only eating very bland food and really getting in touch with the essence of that plant spirit. And after so much time passes, then they'll start receiving the song of the plant spirit. And then they'll be able to use that within their ayahuasca healing when they're working on patients as well. So not only dieting ayahuasca, but dieting many, many, plant spirits of the jungle. So, so in ceremonies, the Shipibo like to work one-on-one with their patients. So, for example, in our Maloka, they actually go around and sit in front of each participant and sing directly to them. They drop in, they're able to, within their vision, actually see where someone may have some blockages or see where they need some clearing in their system. And so not only are they just singing the Ikaros, the medicine songs to clear someone, but then they'll actually be receiving the songs from the plants that they dieted with to help, further and deeper healing with the patient. So obviously, they have, other modalities that they use as well, and they'll use like sacred tobacco, and they will use flower water. They will do plant baths. They will do vomitivos, just, some pre-purging to help clear the system before ceremony. But I could go a lot deeper into the way in which they work, but they have such loving hearts, and it's really beautiful to see that, they will really spend a lot of time with each person to really make sure that there is, very deep healing happening. And it's such a blessing to be working with this tribe.
That's so fascinating. I didn't even know some of that. And I think one really important thing we should talk about, one thing that made all the difference in the world to me was the kinetic situation, the telepathic thing that was happening, and that it sort of bypassed the language barrier. Mm-hmm. And so one really important thing that I'd love to hit on is there are a lot of people that are starting to do ayahuasca, like up in Joshua Tree and in Santa Barbara, and in Mount Shasta. What is really essential about doing ayahuasca in a retreat like yours within the Shipibo culture, as opposed to the United States?
Yeah, that's a good question. And, because my journey started in the Amazon, of course, I favor that type of experience more than in the Western world, which I have experienced as well. And truly, I believe that there's so much power in actually doing this type of experience in the home of the plant. And with these indigenous healers that have been carrying this wisdom for hundreds of years, within their lineage. And yes, there are a lot of people being trained, how to facilitate, and they're taking the medicine out globally and offering it. And although I think, I feel like there are some really good people that are, able to offer in a very integrous way, there's something about, actually going to the home of the plant and working with the indigenous people, because, even just with my own experiences and hearing about other people's experiences that have done ayahuasca, say, in the Western world as opposed to the Amazon, they're not really going that deep with their experience, or they're altogether having really negative experiences. Like there are ceremonies going on where people are driving home at 3 a.m. in the morning, or they're really not getting that one-to-one attention that they really need, or they could they could end up going into a really challenging mareación, they call it, like a trance-like state where they're really suffering, and that facilitator doesn't know how to pull them out of that experience, and they don't know how to shift the energy for that person. So I really feel that it's very important that people that are actually considering doing ayahuasca for the first time, that you really make sure that you are going to be in a safe set and setting, that that the shamans or the facilitators are trained properly in what they do, and yeah, because that's going to make all the difference in the experience. And that also goes for actually doing a series of ceremonies, because it is a journey. And we really recommend at least 3 ceremonies. We do offer 4 at our center. That seems to be the magic number that works with our program. But a lot of people are just going and doing like one ceremony, on a Friday night or Saturday night, and having to go back to work Monday. And although they can derive a lot of benefit out of that experience, I think for those people that actually really want to go deep into their healing process, to actually come down to the jungle and work with these indigenous healers that can actually take you deep, and you get a lot of work done in those, that short, week period that you're down there.
The kinds of people that are coming down to the jungle, what are you seeing? Like, what are the common afflictions? Are they physical? Are they mental? Are they emotional? Are they spiritual? Who are the people that have said, you know what, enough is enough? I'm making this journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the beautiful thing is we're receiving so many different types of people that are coming for all different types of, ailments, whether they be more psychological or physical. So, in terms of like, many people are just coming because they're depressed, and they just don't know how to find that way, out of that depression. They're suffering from anxiety. We have a lot of vets coming with PTSD issues as well, childhood trauma, sexual trauma. We have people with, chronic pain. We have people with autoimmune disorders. We have people coming that have, even cancer, insomnia, migraines. The whole lot. Pretty much anything that that they are not able to receive healing from the Western approach and Western medications. So, and I think in terms of the healing that we're seeing, it really also depends on people's intention when they come. If they are really, if their intention is pure and they are really ready to do the work, and they are really ready to like trust and surrender into this process. Some of the healings that happen, one ceremony, and wow, it's gone, and it's been really amazing to see. So, for example, there was this gentleman who was in his late 30s that had a autoimmune disorder called sarcoidosis, and it was, he with the lungs, and he couldn't breathe very deeply, and it was just, he was suffering with this for about 7 years. In his very first ceremony, he was coughing and purging, and something the size of a walnut, really hard, just came out and into his bucket, and he took a breath, and it was like he had a new pair of lungs. And he was just, he was just able to breathe so deeply, and he hadn't been able to breathe like that in over 7 years. And this is just one of many like miracle healings that we've seen. But he was ready. He was ready to do the work, and he was ready to just let the medicine, work deeply on him. So,
can you give me some context on that? Like, was it just because he was purging that walnut thing came out, or did something happen because of his ceremony and because of the tea that enabled him to get there?
Yeah, it's both. It's all tied in. So, In terms of how the ayahuasca works, and we'll kind of go into this a little bit because I find it really fascinating because with my own process, I could feel and I had a knowing about how it worked, but I wasn't able to always bring in like the scientific terms. And now there's a lot of research happening that's actually able to show, how is ayahuasca able to heal people? And so, a lot of it is trauma based. Some of it is toxins from the environment, but most of it has a psycho spiritual emotional issue. And current research is actually finding that a lot of these imprints are being stored in the epigenome. And so if these issues are not being resolved later in life, this is how these, ailments and diseases are then manifesting in the body. So, in terms of this gentleman's autoimmune disorder, he probably had some kind of deep-seated trauma lodged in his body. And then the ayahuasca goes in. And this is a very high vibrational, extremely intelligent plant spirit. So she can go in and find where, there are these imbalances or have these diseases in the body. And then in conjunction with how the shamans work, and so when they're singing to someone, they're also able to kind of tap in on this submolecular level. They can get down and they can see DNA, they can see the cells, they can see the organs on a very energetic level, and they can pinpoint these areas with their songs and with their energetic vibrations and frequencies, and to kind of shift and alter these areas of the body. So in terms of him actually releasing this thing out of his, whether it was his lungs or whatever it was, the ayahuasca can actually absorb a lot of the negative energy or vibration, and it can be purged out as a physical substance at times. So that is the magic and the beauty of ayahuasca, because it's actually extracting these negative, unhealthy, darker energies to be expelled, and whether that be through vomiting or going to the bathroom, diarrhea, shaking, crying, sweating, all types of ways in which that body can release these energies. So
let me ask you, do you think that ayahuasca is beneficial for everyone, or are there certain people? What are the circumstances where you'd say it's not for you? Who is it not for?
So fortunately, ayahuasca can be for most people. And again, I believe it's really about dropping into the heart space and feeling the calling, and being able to resonate with that type of healing. In terms of who it's not for, it's not going to be for people that are taking medications that it could conflict with. So for example, people that are on antidepressants would not be able to take ayahuasca unless they come off, for an appropriate amount of time beforehand. So that typically needs to be between 4 and 6 weeks before journeying with ayahuasca. So there's several different medications, especially blood pressure medications, that would conflict with ayahuasca. So in terms of our center, we do have a medical screening, and anyone that may be on a medication that conflicts, we can either give appropriate protocol on how to come off of the medication safely in order to prepare to work with ayahuasca, or if they're not able to come off the medications, then, there are other modalities that they can work with. But, maybe some severe mental disorders such as extreme bipolar or schizophrenia, it wouldn't be for those people as well. But again, this is a very spiritual medicine, and, not everyone approaches it needing that spiritual aspect. Maybe they are coming in just to really heal a physical ailment, but also realizing that there is an emotional root component that's out of balance that will need to be, faced in order to actually resolve it. So it's, this is really about the physical, the mental, the emotional, and the spiritual, and really the connection, because we are all these things. The emotional body links the mental body and the physical body. We are emotional beings, and what you can feel, you can heal. And we've always told people in ceremony, you have to experience that which you release. These are the traumas coming out. These are the the traumas and the energies and the imprints and the conditioning that, is being surfaced to look at, to resolve, to purge out, to actually like create a new you. And that's what a lot of people want. They know that there's a better version of themselves that wants to emerge, but they're being bogged down by all these energies that are no longer serving them. And I feel that ayahuasca is a really great way to like, to actually reflect on these things. And when you're in the medicine, it helps remove the ego. And the ego's to the side now, and then you can actually like bring in and drop into your true self, into your higher self, and you can look very objectively at, your patterns in life and your thoughts and belief patterns and what are the things that are holding you back. So it's a really beautiful holistic process, and even though so much healing can happen in the ceremonies themselves, it's going to be the integration process after that is actually what's going to bring about the long-term benefits of this work.
So, is ayahuasca like a magic bullet? Did somebody come down to the retreats and then leave and then suddenly be healed of everything? Or what does the integration or the work look like afterwards?
Yeah, so we always say that the real work starts after the ceremonies, and this is really where, this whole integration process is going to allow people to use the tools and the wisdom and the knowledge and the teachings to really be able to start, a new life. And even though it can be kind of considered a fast track because a lot can be cleared, like a lot of people say it's, 4 ayahuasca ceremonies can be like 10 years of psychotherapy. But the work afterwards is really key. And, so, this could be, from maintaining a healthy diet, actually like really honoring the body, like making sure you're exercising, doing yoga, whatever it is. And this really drops into the shadow work. And so, although oftentimes there is an afterglow period after ayahuasca and you're feeling like you're on cloud 9 and everything's just beautiful and blissful, like this, it's not going to be like that forever. And actually, to be very truthful, ayahuasca, now that you have all this cleared, it's going to be like, okay, now you're ready for the next level and the next like layer of the onion to be pulled off, because we're always doing more self-development. We're always trying to like come into that more authentic self and the true self. So oftentimes, like almost like these tests will appear in your life, and it's an opportunity for you to grow more, to heal more, to actually put those tools and teachings to use in your life. A lot of the time, very dramatic changes will come about after doing ayahuasca. So like your circle of friends change because those other friends weren't really for your highest and greatest good. You might have a career change. You might need to move locations. There might be a partnership separation. So because you're now vibrating on another level, and so your outer reality is going to come to match that. But again, it's gonna, some shadow work is gonna come up, and it's, you're continually, like integration is about the willingness to always be able to like drop in and reflect, and how your life is going, and what things can you strive to do better, and what things do you need to leave behind, and having an integration support system, I feel is really important and key. And a lot of us in the beginning didn't really have that. And I mean, we had each other as friends, which was great, but we didn't really have many people that had been on the path for very long that could actually help us with this. So that's something that, we're offering more and more as time goes on and as we're learning, because in some ways we were pioneers on this path as well, and we had to figure it out as we went along. And so, just sometimes people just need a soundboard too. They just need to be able to talk about it because it's such an intense experience, and so many experiences also happening on the astral plane. And how do you drop that in and actually talk about it in this world? And you can't just like go talk to your normal friends, like, or people that haven't really done ayahuasca. They're not going to quite understand. So the integration process is really important to like maintain the long-term benefits of this work.
So here we are in 2018. This is a really unique time in history. How do you think that your work with ayahuasca and the center's work with ayahuasca is facilitating a shift, a change on a global level? Like, what is the connection?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this path with ayahuasca and the work we do at the center, we've really been feeling and seeing how it's been having a ripple effect and actually benefiting the whole on a global basis. And this is actually something I saw very deeply in one of my visions in the very beginning, is that this medicine was going to help heal the world. It really was. And not only the people that come to do it themselves, but these, the people that are participating in ayahuasca ceremonies, they're not only healing themselves, they're often clearing like lineages of karma, like for their family, ancestry. And when they go back into their lives back at home, and they're now kind of vibrating with this new frequency, and their consciousness has been expanded, they've healed in all these ways. Now they're the example. And it's amazing to see like how many people's families end up shifting and making more healthy choices in their life just because someone in the family, has healed with ayahuasca, and now, they're just becoming this beautiful example of what is possible, and a lot of karma is being cleared, and people are really tapping into their connection with Mother Earth. And I feel that that's so important. We are connected to this planet. She is our mother. She provides all the abundance for us. And that was always very close to my heart, is, to see, all the destruction that was happening on the planet. And I can't just like sit on the sidelines and let it continue. Of course, I can't heal the world myself and alone, but I can do my part. And I think that was one of the biggest messages that I received personally from this medicine path, was like, I need to be in action. What can I do personally to actually help the whole? And I felt that opening a center was going to actually be one of the best ways I could help the whole, because I could help other individuals who would then carry forth their healing for others. We now have a nonprofit where we are doing reforestation work. We're helping the locals with, health programs. We're supporting a bilingual school. So, to make it a very like holistic experience, for myself and for everyone that comes through the center, to actually see that, each individual actually has the power within themselves to make a difference bigger than they could have ever imagined.
Well, I'm living proof. I know from my own experience, my family went through tremendous shifts after I came home from Peru. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. They were really visible. They were obvious, deep shifts.
Nice. Good to hear.
So I think that, it was, these are incredible times, and the center is doing work that I think only a center that's revolves around this kind of healing can really do in many ways. It's very unique. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I would love to hear, actually, because it's so fascinating, I'd love to hear a couple more transformational stories. Like if you could tell me, from various retreats, like what were the other really epic transformations that you were a part of?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, again, it's just been amazing to be able to actually witness so many transformations take place, just through the work at our center. And a few more examples. One is fertility issues. We've had several women and couples come that have struggled to get pregnant years and years with their partner. And they'll come to the center, they'll do one retreat. Often the shamans will give them an additional plant medicine to take. And within weeks of leaving the retreat, they're pregnant. So, so many beautiful babies, ayahuasca babies, coming out of this experience, which has been really beautiful to see. Another one is a lot of chronic pain. So a lot of like even just back issues or whatnot, a lot of like inflammation, and again, just not being able to there's been no success with any other medications or healing modalities. So a lot of healing with chronic pain, insomnia, migraines. And then one of the most recent and most beautiful healing and transformations is we had a young woman of 25 years old come with stage 3 cancer who had a mass on her leg. And, she had been starting to go down the route of the Western approach, and they wanted to do chemotherapy and radiation, and she just did not want to go down that. She just knew how much that would stress her body and actually, toxify her body. So she decided to come down and do a retreat with us. And at first it was just one retreat, and we had her on other plant medicine remedies as well. And within 9 days, her mass shrunk over 50%. And then she came back for a month shortly thereafter, and again was working with ayahuasca and other plant remedies, and it just shrunk another 75% after that. So she's well on her way, from being stage 3 cancer, within just a matter of months, and having this shrink so much. And, there's a little bit more healing for her to do, but she's well on her way, and she didn't actually need to go down that route of chemotherapy and radiation. So that's been really beautiful to witness.
Wow. What do you tell me a little bit about the bonding that takes place between people who come to your retreat? What are the relationships and the bonds that can form down there?
Yeah, it's been really interesting to see, the dynamics of people coming together and the lifelong friendships that are made between so many of the people that come to the retreats. And I don't believe in just like coincidences. This is all very kind of divinely aligned and cosmic, and people coming together that, feel they've had past lifetimes together. But that has been one of the most beautiful things. I mean, people from, retreats even 9-10 years ago still staying in touch, and to be able to drop into that vulnerability, with a new group of people, and to go through that process together of vomiting and all the purging and all the epiphanies and the realizations, and just sharing that, it's so special for people. And Nimea Kaya we've created a home-like environment. We really want our guests to be super comfortable, super safe, where they can really just drop in, be themselves. And it's been so special to see the friendships that have been made at our place.
Do you have any final thoughts or closing words to the interview that we've just done?
Yeah, thank you for asking. Ayahuasca is such a beautiful medicine. And again, although it's not for everyone, there's a lot of people feeling the call to work with this medicine right now. And if you are feeling the call to work with ayahuasca, I just want to recommend you really drop into your heart space and really start to reflect on how you want to change your life, because this will be one of the most profound experiences of your entire life. If you're really ready for a new you and ready for that true self to emerge, maybe this is for you. And, we're at a really interesting time in history, and I really feel like ayahuasca is availing herself right now because humanity needs her. There is so much suffering that's happening, so many people with disease that don't know how to heal, and it has just been amazing to actually witness the transformations that's going on, with the medicine path. So I, highly recommend to do a bit more research and to make sure that you're in a safe setting with this process and let the magic unfold.
And as I can say from personal experience, I would say going to your retreat in February marked the difference between the before and after of my life. My life is for sure in two distinct chapters. Mm-hmm. This chapter being the most joy-filled, light, beautiful, deep, trusting, part of my life so far. And I think it's no coincidence that it all really started to unfold after I went down to Nimea.
I'm so glad to hear that. Thank you
Great.
so much, Michelle. I really enjoyed this interview with you.